privileged when our alumni returns to meet with us, particularly in such important discussions. Phumelela Nqelenga Push will facilitate our discussion this evening. She is a member of the research group Feminist Decoloniality as Care, FEMDAC, and her research is interdisciplinary and centers contemporary Nguni performance, site-specific performance, and the role of the Black female body in performance. These foci have, in addition to many pursuits, and quite interestingly to me as a fine arts scholar, included her being a subject in Zanele Moholi's practice, and her becoming a queer activist whose work engages art practice that is particularly poignant in visibilizing different lived experiences. We are extremely privileged to be witness to this discussion, and I look forward to the way that you will express your engagement in our Q&A that follows. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can I speak here now? Do I have to stand there? Here.
Sorry?
Can I sit here? Engos. Distinguished guests, colleagues, and fellow storytellers. Indwana zami. Thank you. All right, thank you. Hello. Oh, okay. I sit here before you with deep gratitude. Thank you to Uspokazi Gondibisa Dasabe for granting me this opportunity to reflect on a body of work that is not only cinematic, but profoundly cultural. Jamil Nkumeko's offering is more than a film. It is a mirror held up to our communities, illuminating themes that strike at the heart of who we are and challenging the ways we have been taught to see masculinity. My own journey in Nqubeka's artistry began with Knuckle City. In that film, I recognized men whose lives felt achingly familiar. Men navigating a city where violence is not merely an act, but a language, a rite of passage. It is here that theater and film converge. In actor training, Zolisa, we often speak of anger as a secondary emotion, a rupture triggered by something deeper. It takes actors of extraordinary courage to excavate those depths, to move past the spectacle of rage and into the fragile truths beneath. Artists such as Zolisa Kaluva and his co-stars have done this precisely. They are custodians of our narratives. They do not judge the characters they embody. Instead, they explore their inner meanings, allowing us to connect with truths that might otherwise remain hidden. Through their performances, they have captured our imagination as Black people, not merely through representation, but by touching the very edges of our sensibilities. In Queenstown Kings, masculinity is staged as a performance, echoing Njabulo Ndebele's notion of the spectacle of violence. Ndebele critiques how South African cultural texts often dramatize violence as a public display of power, obscuring the ordinary workings of domination. The film dramatizes this dynamic by showing how men are measured by their capacity for aggression, dominance, and heroic display, particularly through soccer culture. Ubuyile Terra embodies this spectacle. His masculinity is tied to his past glory, his aggression, and his refusal to show vulnerability. Yet the film critiques this model by revealing his destructive consequences: failed fatherhood, fractured community ties, and a personal ruin. Becky Caesar Peterson's insight sharpened this critique. Peterson emphasizes how African cultural narratives frequently reproduce patriarchal myths of male heroism, presenting masculinity as mythic performance. These performances, however, are fragile, collapsing when confronted with lived realities of vulnerability and care. In Queenstown Kings, Boyile's mythic masculinity unravels as he confronts his estranged son and the community's disillusionment. The spectacle of dominance is exposed as hollow, incapable of sustaining meaningful relationships or collective dignity. We are all too familiar with figures of schoolboys on South African television screens. He appears again and again, Lomfana, not as a mere character, but as a symbolic entity, a mirror reflecting who we are as a community. I often think of the crocodile in Sarafina, his brutal life unfolding under the weight of apartheid regime.
Takabamba.
His uniform was not just clothing. It was a marker of youth caught in a machinery of oppression, a reminder that innocence could be weaponized, disciplined, and scarred. Schoolboys in uniform carry the contradictions of our collective history. They embody both the promise and peril, hope and despair. They remind us of the fragility. Thank you very much. Schoolboys in uniform carry the contradictions of our collective history. They embody both the promise and peril, hope and despair. They remind us of the fragility of youth in a society where violence and domination have too often been normalized. And yet, they also remind us of resilience, of the capacity to laugh, to dream, even when the world insists on crushing those dreams. I am reminded again of a young and charismatic Javas in Yizo Yizo, for instance. His humor and bravado becomes tools of survival, ways to negotiate the complexities of post-apartheid township schools. But beneath the laughter lay a reality riddled with violence, toxic patterns of masculinity, and the constant demand to perform toughness. Javas, like so many of our boys, was forced to navigate a world where vulnerability was punished, where tenderness was denied, and where redemption seemed elusive. The schoolboy on our screen is not just a character. He's a call to action. So today, as we reflect on Queenstown Kings, let us recognize that this film is more than entertainment. It is testimony. It is resistance. It is a call to reimagine ourselves beyond the confines of violence, beyond the distortions of masculinity, and towards a vision of redemption. I look forward namhlanje badoda to discuss with Dr. Melusi Dlamini, Ulwanda, and of course our storytellers here, Zolisa and Jamil. Mandise apha ebuhlanti ke, ndiyabulela. Thank you. Melusi, masiyeke mfana.
Okay, so I think my introductory thoughts are really just engaging with the film and how I come to connect with it and how I took a journey through the film, and it also helped me be able to articulate some of the things that really resonated with me. So my own research focuses on masculinities, on health, intimacies and care in South Africa. And especially how young men navigate relationships, their emotional lives, as well as the social expectations that society often places on men, right? Yeah. So I enter this conversation as someone who's interested in how the lives of young men like Ufezile and men like Ubuyile, how they navigate their everyday. I'm not necessarily interested in the moments of violence that seem to be sensationalized, as Upush is saying in the media. So for me, the film is not just a story of individual failure or success, but it is a meditation on manhood under pressure. It forces us to see men as they navigate grief, as they navigate care, and also understand the possibilities that emerge within the vulnerability, the possibilities that emerge through their experiences and their struggles with failure. Yeah. So we see here how Buyile is redeemed by his failure, he's redeemed and he's even transformed by his challenges. So I was also struck by the opening scene. So we see the way that Ubuyile is introduced to us and he's already under pressure. He's under financial pressure. He's under pressure in his relationships. And so we understand that this pressure is not just symbolic. We see it as pressure that befalls not only a man, but the one who's made it. The way that Boiti speaks, she's shouting and she's saying, people from home are calling, they want money, right? So there's something there for me that resonates with the idea of being at university, right? And the reality is also that it buys us a level of opportunity in the world. So here is Buile navigating this idea of being the one who's made it, and before he gets the call, the assumption is that they want money. But it also points to the other element of this, which in the beginning of the film, I felt like Boiti was tapping into this idea of indoda master, the idea of indoda having to provide. Because despite her knowledge of his challenges, she's wanting to fly home. She's wanting the car to be fixed. So it's all of these things where she's demanding in spite of recognizing Buile's challenges. So we see here how men are socialized to absorb pain and how they are expected to navigate these pressures in private. And for me, especially with my interest in working with men and health, and in particular healthy masculinities, there's also something very compelling about Buile's injury. And we see him bandaged, his knee is bandaged at the start, but one would wonder, is this a physical pain, is this a physical injury, or is it an emotional injury?
Sure.
So we see here that in the film, it helps us then think of how men are then forced to navigate the various vulnerabilities and the various injuries that they incur throughout life. Especially here, we also understand how masculinity and how certain forms of manhood discourage men from seeking help and from seeking support.
Sure.
And it's also mentioned by another character later about how when men are injured, instead of healing, they then think of party time. But for me, it also speaks to this regressive element of masculinity that says we need to deny our vulnerability, we need to deny our weakness. And even when we are hurt, we carry on, we drink, and we put ourselves in further danger. So what I also really liked about the film is how it centers grief and trauma. Often in the lives of men, grief and trauma and even hurt can be treated as a peripheral issue. But here we see it as something that prompts Buile to go home. But there's also something about how he's drinking on his way home, and I see that as an additional element of the pressure he's feeling. Again, often so many of us are then expected to go home. Let's take away his issue with substance for a moment. There's the expectation that he's going to go home and then provide and sort things out. Once Uputi is here, things are going to, So I then looked at his drinking on his way home through that lens. Then there's also something that I really like in the film, the voices of women and the roles women have in the film. Starting with the magistrate. And so for me, there's something about seeing women in power, and there's I think of it as a reluctant care, but there's also a care she exercises in giving him another chance. And I thought this was such a powerful way to frame women in the film, but also we see the same pattern playing out with Uboiti. We see it playing out with Olisa and with
Queens of the town.
The queens of the town, yes, indeed. So that for me, I think is such an important element, and it's a reminder as well that masculinity does not emerge in isolation.
In vacuum.
It is always in relation. So here we see how it is women who are not just giving birth to, but are shaping these men, even when they have been wayward youth, as it is said. So that I also thought was quite an important
Hey
observation.
man, this guy saw everything. He's deep.
But also going back to the magistrate, I think there's something about the way the legal system
Yeah.
frames this man who's in front of them. Before they even give him a chance, he's already treated in a particular way. And I thought that is also worth noting, and how it almost can become a foretelling of the story of the other young men who are in the soccer team.
Correct.
And maybe I'll also end on this point. I think I could go on forever. I think it's such a rich film for analysis. But there was also something about the motive of anger throughout the film, right? Anger seems to be the only emotion that men are allowed to feel. And we see it with Fezile kicking the soccer ball. We see it with Yako when again he's kicked out of the team. And the way that Buile, I don't know if Buile recognizes himself in Yako's acting out, but there's something about Yako also expressing that anger. And for me, the fact that, again, you can't shy away from the racial dynamic of South Africa. But I really liked how it became a common theme between Fez and Yako, this anger and being forced to show emotion only through anger. But there are these moments then of redemption where with Umeja and Ufez, in that moment where he's allowed to be vulnerable and to acknowledge his failure with substance and that kind of struggle. But even for me, with that, there's also just something we need to collectively think about the place of men and not allowing them to feel or even to seek help. There's something about how Umeja finds himself trying to get clean on himself, by himself, and not actually going for the help and support that he needs. So I think it's all of these things that show us how gender is not just something our bodies do, but it also shapes our lives, and we see it in the everydayness of the Queenstown Kings.
Oh wow.
Thank you.
Good Lord. What was that? What would you say all that? That was highly insightful.
Molweni.
I didn't mean to laugh.
So-
That was funny.
I'll start with speaking a bit about my own research. My research comes through the door of theater. And I was going through a bit of a moment, and I wanted to figure out how I could use theater as a medium to foster a tough conversation. And for that, if I just apply it to the context, it's a better way, it's a more conducive way for us to tackle taboo or difficult conversations. It's less boring. It's a way for us to laugh about our pain and enter through more of a visceral experience where I'm not just telling you, I'm actually carrying you through my journey. So, Ukuba, Being and Becoming is the title of my research. It's an autoethnography of performing masculinity and the process of becoming indoda through isiko lolwaluko. I explore the psychological, spiritual, and existential dimensions of being and becoming a man through El Siko. I confront the fact that Gen Z initiates are now going through a phase or a time in which they have to have these discussions in a time where gender politics are completely different from the people who precede them. There's mental health awareness now at a higher level. There's shifting masculinities. So how do we negotiate or continue to negotiate who we become after Ulaluko? What is the aftermath of the initiation? And that's a big part of my research. And when I bring that to the film, oh my bad for, I don't know. Okay, I'm just, Okay, fair enough. Yeah, when I look into the film, okay, no, firstly, let me say this. I use boxing as a metaphor in my, my play. So I use boxing as a metaphor because it captures the discipline, the intimacy, and the behavior that's required for you that are typically attached to hegemonic masculinity. So, you know, in the ring, you have to blow with the punches. It's a constant negotiation of round after round, and each round presents a different challenge. And from that, I found that even though digqithile round yolwaluka ndaye esuthwini, ikhona round yoba kumkhuluwa, ikhona round yoba likrwala. And ke ngoku also nditsho kuba nangona ndihleli nabakhuluwa bam bandamkelile njengobhuti omdala, badlala indima ebangobhuti abadala apha. Uyabo abazanga as only your celebrities or everything, you know. Dithobile, thathi bobhuti and everything. So it's an interesting dynamic of different generations, and it appears even as a filming when Lendwana utata wayo he has a rift with his father, and he didn't get to address the rift with his father. Uter utatera kangayifumani chance yovalela cango kahle netime yakhe. Lendwana yona isaphila itime yakhe yabo banengxaki. So what happens if Tara drives drunk and instead of going to jail he dies? That kid has to go through. Do you understand? And then the way that he deals with that, is it going to be a reflection of his father? Is he going to just drink? Because and as a price area, I like, it's just hard to overcome the area, and especially Clan City. With regards to my story, the Sukem Tanzania, Tayohlale town, Daza roads. Yonke lento ndiyenze doluka ne. Goku ulwaluko lwam into enzekayo kulo is that I go through this entire journey of fighting so hard to become indoda. And ikhona indawo lapha kule show xa bengena ebhasini. Athi utatera ayike manene. Ziyamos indlukutsha. Coming up, uyabo? So ke oku, it's even if we kept in Latin okanye uyise star. Ubudoda buphezulu. That's what I'm trying to negotiate. That's a nice theme that I see in the film. With regards to the sports, you know, it's important that we hold each other accountable. La team njebe lamchita efilisha isazela when he disappoints his team and he trades them for Sundowns, which is interesting because it's Sundowns. You know? But still, imfundiso zakhe ziyamxelela uba he's doing something, he's betraying his teammates. And they celebrate him, but still the guilt fills him. How does he deal with the guilt? You know, fortunately, because of our great director and actor, they had a great story, but many times that story goes a whole different way. And I've seen many of that, and I'm bringing that to the forefront of the discussion much more. Yeah, I would just say the movie was so good, man. Yeah. Yeah. Now it was just, yeah. You know? And then I had to watch with people, and all the moments are so much more real. When everyone is like feeling it. And that's what theater affords us. That's why we tell the stories on the stage, so that you can feel it as it happens. You develop a bond with the characters, and you resonate with their story. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Siyabulela kakhulu umntwana wasemtsantsane. That's the native unit. Hey, Ichini. Over to you,
Takes one now.
Jamil. I would like to just quickly pose a question, in fact. In that, what questions, Nina, as storytellers, Did you ask yourselves to get closer to the dignity and humanity of these men?
Can you hear me? Okay. Molweni.
Again.
My art, I'm 47 now, right? Yes, boy, that guy, that's what he's right behind me. And at this point in my life, reflection is a big part of my existence. I'm constantly reflecting on myself and the things that I've done. And in regards to my work, I've been doing this for 25 years now. And in so doing it, if I had to really encompass what is it about, because I tell different stories. Well, I try to. This is the thing that I'm hiding. I try to tell different stories, but they're all the same story. And what it is really, it's me tussling with my own humanity and my masculinity as a man. I don't know how to tell any other story. The story I'm curious about is how I operate, essentially. And then in telling and sharing that, hopefully it can resonate with others. That's why I do what I do, and I really appreciate this medium and form. But my main driving force, just to answer the question, it comes really from the fact that as one who's curious about the journey of humanity, I find that we are in a very interesting flux. I can't think of a time in history where we're moving as quickly as we have and are in the past 200 years. It's insane. From loincloth to where we are now, atom bombs, splitting atom bombs, it's incredible. However, you can track the journey of development through technology, through industry, but where I'm more interested in it's the social. Okay? But get a grip of this. Indigenous people. About 100 or so years ago, not even that long, maybe like 70 to 80 years ago, you could make the argument, right, that you needed your tribe to survive. Black, white, doesn't matter what you are, you needed your kin. You had to be around your kin, those who look like you and hopefully they think like you, okay, to survive. But in this evolution, in this movement, in this flux, you didn't need kin all of a sudden. You just needed people who were agreeable to you, who saw the world in the way that you did, so that you kind of surround yourself with them, right? Next point, family. Just the other day, you needed family to survive. You don't need family now. The individual is what this revolution and evolution has come to propagate. If you don't believe me, just go to the West. Go to Hong Kong, go to London, go to New York, and see how the reality is becoming more and more individualized. It's about the individual. So now you don't need family to survive. You don't need your tribe to survive. And we're propagating individuality. And it's in this space that I find, and I can only talk about my group, I'm pretty sure it's the same in others, where the black man finds himself in a crisis. We're all in a crisis, don't worry. Ladies too, but I can only speak to what I know. And hopefully it'll elicit even your own respective thought in, you know. But I find our pressure and our crisis is in this individualization cell that we are basically evolving into. I don't need my tribe, I don't need my family, I just need me. What does that essentially leave me with? Anyways, I'll leave it at that for now.
Molweni. First of all, thank you so much for opening up the space for us to come and engage you and get to play our film in front of you. It's been such an enormous pleasure sitting around people that we do this for, sitting next to you, rubbing your shoulders and feeling your energy, and seeing your reaction and your responses to pivotal moments in the story that we didn't even have to come out here and explain because your hearts were so open to it. I'm not a scholar in terms of masculinity and all of this. And I'm not an intellectual in terms of the art of filmmaking. My entry point in the argument is from the point of view of an artist, from the point of view of a performer. But first and foremost, before I am all of that, I am a human being. I am a man, and you know what I'm called, I do.
Thank you. Nkosi, thank you. Stand by.
I do have a perspective on things from my 45 years of life. And as someone who grew up in the 20th century, which was very highly masculine, you know. We had 2 world wars in the previous century. Our fathers, grandfathers, and great-grandfathers grew up in that period. And the weight of that kind of violence is felt through their experiences, and they bled all over us. And I find myself as a man born in the later part of the century, having to assimilate both that hectic, possibly toxic masculinity, and have to blend it with the femininity of the 21st century, you know? So I think Tina says, you know what I mean? But from an artistic point of view, in as far as the Queenstown Kings is concerned, for me, when I entered into the business of acting, I never wanted to be a celebrity, you know? I could have gone and studied law and studied other things, but there's an innate calling that I felt within my soul. And with that, I realized that I would have an audience. And knowing that I have an audience, I felt that I needed to have a responsibility to that audience. To impart, to teach, to inspire, for people to aspire to things. And most importantly, to help people with stories that I tell, heighten their consciousness on things. The entry point for me into Queenstown Kings comes from the background of having played other characters. Some were characters that were quite feminine. Jason was a bisexual man. I thought that was an important story to tell at that time. It's masculinity in its own way.
It's all masculine.
Diamond Mabu is a vicious character. No redeemable human qualities at all, to a point where we had to kill him. I played Melusi Dlamini at some point.
No.
On a show called Gomorrah, you know. Good man, a community builder, but a man who was also wounded, you know, who had no one to share his wounds with, you know. But at least he was an inspirational enough man, a man who tried hard enough to empower his community with something. So I've always tried to play characters that speak to something. What drew me the most to this play was watching a man who is masking his vulnerability to a point, but doesn't have to be violent. You know what I mean? But he's violent to himself because he's very self-destructive. His injuries, he's living a lie basically the entire time, and he's masking it with alcohol. He's unable. What was beautiful to see is that it's difficult for him to open up. I think singalamadoda singakunzima because sesiqhelelana uba ngabe indoda ifela ngaphakathi okanye ikhalela ngaphakathi afuneka ngilile, you know, all of that. Uyalila la mntu, yabo? But he just is not doing it outwardly. So I was drawn to his vulnerability, and I was drawn to the through line of the story, where his journey from where it begins and how it ends at the end. I think it's a beautiful, inspirational story. I hope that I've done justice to the part because I played it with so much passion. But most importantly, I hope it has done something to tell at least Amajita that use the people around you. You know, we've got lovers, we've got partners, we've got brothers, there's always somebody to talk to. And there's always a silver lining, you know, to every problem. And I always find, as a man now, that when I talk to friends about things that bother me, he knows I speak to him about very deep stuff that is personal to me. To have brothers like him and other brothers and other people to talk to, I always feel a little bit better. As a result, I always say to people, I don't feel pressure in life. Because I always know there is a silver lining, there is a through line to everything. Yeah, there's people around, there's love all around us. I think we have this need to just bottle things up, and we blow up in ways, and we bleed all over people. but in actual fact, ukuvula isifuba and to just speak and not to cry. You know, I don't necessarily cry in front of other men, but when I do allow myself the space to say, "Khawulile mtshana," yabo, or like, cool. I once experienced something in 2010 that I did share with my friends that they know about. And for a few days, I was like, "I'm tough man, I'm a grand," you know. Suddenly, I was just walking in my house and I walked past a mirror and I looked at myself and I just broke down. And as because like I'm seeing this guy who's going through this, like, you know, because you don't see yourself when you walk around. But the moment you see that mirror, then it's like, okay, here's this person. You know what I mean? Yeah, I broke down and I allowed myself to cry. And I think I started teaching myself to actually allow that to happen, because every time it does happen, I do feel a little bit of a load taken off my shoulders. So Lilan, gents, it's okay, you know?
Thank you so much for that response. I would like to now sort of lead it to the audience, if that's okay with everybody.
Sure.
Yeah.
If there are any questions, any comments, any insights from the audience. Gary, if you front of house, can you just, yeah.
Push.
All right, where are we, Gary? And goes,
Thank you so much. So my name is Lazarus Kacheng. I'm a master's candidate in the politics department, but I'm here in my capacity as someone who works for the equity and institutional culture, and I lead the positive masculinity campaign around campus with my colleagues. So I've got quite a few takeaways. I think my most important takeaway was that I wanted to say thank you to you guys for portraying men that grieve, feel, and cry and attend to their trauma in a cultural context that is so far away from the city. Because in our contemporary situations, men that feel their trauma, cry, or speak about their emotions, it often comes as a point of de-association from manhood. So I wanted to say thank you for actually portraying that to us. And for me, while I was sitting in the audience and watching the entire film, it spoke and touched on the rhetoric of leaving the boy child behind. And it actually showed me that I don't necessarily think that the boy child is being left behind, just that there's a lot that happens in our communities that doesn't make it to these big arenas that have the discourses, that doesn't make it to the news channels, that doesn't make it to the academic discussions. But then the boy child is not necessarily left behind, because in the film we see how sport is being used as a mechanical tool to actually try to bring the boy child along. And I think that's one thing that was more like a light bulb moment for me. And also, I was speaking to my colleagues, and also something that the panelist, Dr. Melusi, touched on, that in the film there's a portrayal of a debatable role that women also do play in cocooning this man into, shaping them into relying to toxic masculinity. A point in case is when the mamazala of the coach, or when the woman told the coach that you speak a lot, sometimes it's okay to just keep quiet. And then when we have this conversation, we try to implore men to be open with their feelings, to be open with what they go through. But in that specific context, she was doing contrary to what we usually employ men to do in our social spaces that we hold. And I think the film comes at a pivotal point in our university space, whereby masculinity always finds themselves in the intersections of being and activism. So I'm an activist in my own right, and I think in the film, activism for me came across as raising awareness against alcoholism or substance abuse. And sometimes if we get lost into the humor of the film, that can just fly above our heads. But with masculinity, you have to do a lot of activism to actually show, man or male identifying people how okay it is to speak about your feelings or to even cry, And now I'm going to conclude with a question. My question is, my question is to you, Jamil, as the director. What point of your own personal life did you have to use as muse when you were trying to create the film? Because I know as creators, we sometimes have to tap into our own personal experiences, especially in masculinity and, you know, raising awareness against substance abuse. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Great question and great insights. Just to quickly answer that question, I don't really write anything that I can't reference in some form or another. For me, my work has always been a healing aspect of what I do, because it has brought a healing aspect to what I do, because when I was a kid, excuse my French, right? When I was about 17, I really couldn't believe the amount of shit I had gone through at 17. The things to this day at 47, I don't know many kids who'd seen the shit I saw by the time I was 17. I'd seen everything, more than most humans should, outside of war zones, okay? I come from a family of organized criminals, and beyond that, I was born into a world that was a movie, which is why I went and resorted to this art. So everything that you see in my films, it doesn't matter how mad or crazy, I've got some reference of some sort. It may not be necessarily direct, but everything I draw from something that I've essentially in one form or another seen. Just one thing around the alcoholism thing, okay? Because I don't want you necessarily just to fixate on alcoholism. The fundamental indictment I'm making on my people around that particular issue, and even how terror deals with it, and the family skirts around the issue, is that we, unfortunately, as a broken society and culture, down the line, we've gotten to a point where we, what's the word I'm looking for? We allow for self-harm to be an acceptable reality. Do you understand? Habits of self-harm have gotten to a space where we are accepting of them. And I'll speak again from my own reference point, like with my mother, for instance. My mother, her whole life, she's suffered from substance abuse. And it's not just her, she's not unique, because the whole fucking community is like that. And I was always, even as a child, fascinated by how we kind of still prop it up. I'm not saying castigate her. Sure, yes, support her dealing with her trauma, but call it what it is. And that's what we don't do. We don't call it what it is. We don't call it in camaraderie-ship. You don't tell your buddy, hey, it's a gagacho. You know? You don't do it with your parents. We covet. And parents do it to us. Mothers do it to their sons. So to me, that was the indictment. It's not just about alcohol. It's about all of our social habits. Yeah. Thanks.
Jerry, can we keep it to 3 questions at a time so that we can get everybody? Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kotulo Ngasana. I don't do any creative subject, but I am a creative, so that counts for something. I think for me, the greatest thing that I saw was just overall in the whole film, how it's rooted in grassroots football, right? And that speaks so much to what you had touched on about the hegemony of masculinity. These days we find masculinity to be in a way that it has to have upward mobility and visibility. You need to be famous, you need to have power, there needs to be enduring dominance. But this grassroots element brings us back to the fact that it's not like your PSL leagues, your European leagues, or even Sundowns. It's to say that masculinity and its identity can exist within small spaces as well, within our communities. Those roots, right? And a lot of that breeded community. it's quite interesting how in the beginning you said the development of humans is moving towards a very individualistic approach. We are becoming more individual than anything. We are thriving in our individualism. I think for me, I was struck because all I can ever think of is how community still prevails. I mean, take Tara, for example, in the film, right? He has a very masculine arc in his character that changes from this individual dominance to communal investment. He experiences an ego death, to say. Experiences an ego death and has to come back to the community and then now give back. In a sense that he becomes a servant leader, but also realizes that he needs others to survive. And I think for me, that's when I realized that community still prevails. So I just wanted to understand also, while you have that perspective in the beginning, you still showed it in your film to say that a communal understanding of masculinity is quite important towards like an individual's character, yet how do you still distinguish the individual from that? So we're individual to individual, we're in a community, but how do we bring it back still to the self? Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else, Gary? Sorry? We're taking three at a time, yes. Is the microphone outside? At the back as well.
Molweni,
Very good.
Ndingubabalo Bakana. I am doing my joint honors in drama and isiXhosa. So my question is really from a creative arts student perspective. Having engaged with such heavy themes, you know, intense, and I'm sure the rehearsal process was intense, it was long, you spent a lot of time with the character as opposed to yourself. Is there maybe a de-rolling process, like post-production, that you engage in to separate from the feelings that you're immersed in for, I don't know, a production period of maybe a month or two? Yeah, what is the post-production? How do you de-roll and separate from the characters? Thank you.
One more, please. Front of house at the back, I think, no? Sorry, we come in. Oh, wait. So who are we taking first, Gary? I think we're going to go at the back. We haven't seen them. Then we'll come to you, Susunga Warish. Who is it?
Hi, my name is Idana Zishiri, and I'm an art history and visual culture student. And basically, this question I'd like to please ask to Jamil, our director. In Queenstown Kings, how does Fazile's acceptance into Sundowns intensify the pressure on him to prove himself? And how is that pressure tied to expectation of masculinity? Thank you.
Individualism.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say on that point, né? For me, I really believe that there's a responsibility for the individual to cultivate self. Because if you don't cultivate yourself, when you go to the group, you're just going there unhealthy. So if we had a culture of fundamentally self-regulation, right? So that I want to be healthy so that I can contribute to the bigger cause. And I think that's where a lot of that is essentially lost. But again, as much as I'm saying this is where we are, it doesn't mean that that's what it should be. Of course we need community, of course we need ourselves, of course we need all of these things. But there's an urgency, quite specifically, around us as black people here because we're in a crisis.
De-rolling, okay. You know, the whole thing about acting is that it's a highly spiritual thing, you know. don't decide if you are genuine about it, that one day I'm just going to wake up and do it. It's something that is inbred, it's in you. And God gives to you with the ability to do the work. And he also gifts you with the ability to discern between the work and yourself. It's a very fair question because the emotions do get deep. You do get into a production for a long period of time sometimes. And the mind doesn't know, or the brain doesn't know that what you're doing is acting or you're playing. It sees it for what it is, you know what I mean? I think when we did Queenstown Kings, which was 2022, I had just come off Gomorrah, did Queenstown Kings, did Kings of Joburg, and like 3 or 4 other productions back to back, non-stop. All the way up to
Blood Psalms before that.
Blood Psalms and all of that, yeah. Up to about 2 years ago in 2024, where I did a show called Pound for Pound, Code 13, that was just like busy, like non-stop. So I'd gotten into this roller coaster kind of mindset where I'm like, I'm acting. Zolisa does not exist for that period of about 2.5 years non-stop. I then got to a point where I was just physically and emotionally exhausted, you know, and I needed to kind of like pull away and take a break and say to myself, okay, cool, you've done the work. The responsibility you have to the people has been served to some extent. It's time to get back to self. So I forced myself to take a hiatus of about, I think I took about, say, 12 to 15 months, where I was like, I'm not taking on anything. I just want to get back home, spend time with family, mother, father, cousins, everybody, you know, the family part of things. I then went back to friends, where I'm like, I haven't seen so-and-so in a while, you know. Let me visit and see where they're at, where everybody, and in doing so, you kind of rediscover yourself and go back to self. You go on a little holiday somewhere, you know, by yourself with friends, you have fun, you party a little bit, you know, and just get back to who you, because one has to live a balanced life, you know. You immerse yourself in the roles, definitely, but when it's all said and done, I think my cushion or my place of safety, where I can be completely vulnerable, it's family and it's friends, and sometimes it's just a little bit of solitude.
Since you asked about
Post-production.
Ufezile's journey
Yes, sorry.
and Sundowns. So I'm pleased to announce that this journey is not complete yet. What I mean by that is there's more, even me artistically, that I want to explore with the character. Okay? So we're making a sequel. And we start shooting next month, end of the month. So drama students, look out for those auditions. I'll give you an email. Kayla, K-A-Y-L-A. Kayla, come on, hurry up. We don't have time. Kayla, shh. Kayla at yellowboneentertainment.com, okay? This is for the drama people. Just email her, tell her you were at this lecture, and tell her to please keep you up to date as to what they're doing with auditions, because I don't know what the story is, okay? Anyways, that aside, just to answer the lady's question, why are we going forward still with story? There's still more to be explored in terms of masculinity, okay? There's 2 strands that I'll just talk about here, and then we'll just leave it at that. Just hopefully it'll answer your question. Where I'm curious about Ufezile is that when we last saw him, he was 17 years old. The film now is 4 or 5 years down the line. So Ufezile down the line, without spoiling it too much, he's a Sundowns player. Okay? So we're exploring what it's like to be a 22, 23-year-old with the world affirming you. Do you show up? And if you do show up, who shows up? That's where we're essentially looking at him. Fana, we explore as well as a character. around what you talk about vulnerability. The last we saw him was that he got shot. Now Fana got shot by someone from his own community. And that has a price for him that he's harboring and he's been keeping inside for a good 5 years. He's angry at his own people. They let him down. The people that he's always trusted. So there's another sensibility that comes out if you don't deal with trauma like that. And this man, 5 years down the line, he's got a toddler baby and twins on the way.
Busy man.
I won't say too much about what he's doing, but he is at a point in his life where he stays up at night. At 2 in the morning, he's awake because everyone else is asleep in the house. And that's when he deals with his fear. And Mbuile's fear in his mid-40s is not showing up. I'll leave it at that in terms of the
All right, I think, Gary, I don't know what time it is, but we can 3 more, is that okay? And then I'll lead to you, Haika. Thank you. All right, let's be fair, Gary. We'll start here, a little bit up there and a little bit up there. Is that okay?
Can I ask him a question?
Yes.
Fantastic, while you get the mic. So you picked up on something that I thought was very, very important around upoiti, which is this idea that she knows her guy's struggling.
Yeah.
She knows that he's not the top player anymore. She knows it's not his house. She knows the Porsche is the problem. She knows he has no money in his account, right? But now and then, she brings it on. She brings the pressure of where she wants to be and with him. I abide by a saying in a relationship where it says, her problems are your problems, but your problems are your problems. Speak more to that in terms of that pressure to the modern man.
So
what's that about?
Firstly, how I view Boiti, I also thought there's an element of redemption, even for Boiti.
Yes.
Because where we see her at the end of the film, she's willing to let go of all those trappings and is accepting him back, but as a new man. Indeed, there are these difficulties that have to do with then being materialistic. Again, I think of the other character who says, wake up. So I think there's a social expectation, even for young women in their context, for them to have the material aspects, right? And I think it's her and other young women like that responding to that. Where I was a bit, I don't know what the word is, but I would have wanted more character development for someone like Boiti, because the way she's framed, it's as if her only way out is through a man, right? And so I would have loved to see her being her own woman and having success, because how I see the women, as much as they are showing up and are keeping men accountable, but they are still umama, they are still wife, and they are still ugogo. So I would have loved to see them as their own women. But to come back to Boiti, I think because we see her growing up in how she responds in the relationship, it's where we see her wanting is possibly because of the social context that makes her only want.
Yeah. And I mean, I want to move away from this idea also around, what do you call them? Gold digging or that kind of a thing.
That trope,
Because essentially, guys, we have a huge situation around poverty. And amantombazane elokishini certain girls are raised in that way, unfortunately. That, hey, this is the route that you need to take to get yourself out of this situation. And quite often we don't take these things into account. It's not just about gold digging. Kuyanyiwa, but it's as simple as that. Sorry. Anyway,
Right, I will take 2 questions. I do apologize. Enkosi kakhulu. Thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
My name is Asamela Amgelani Chauke. And when we talk about theater, we talk about my favorite thing to do and to be, right? And my favorite part is not necessarily watching the theater, although it's wonderful. My favorite part is going outside and having those conversations. And as I was talking to my colleague here, Usihle Bigija, we were talking about the fact that we see so many women in this space, and they are less men than they are women. And now you've created a movie, and it's not necessarily that men are the target audience, but they are the people that need to hear. They are the people who need to have the conversations outside of this room. Okay, so my question is, as artists, how do we then, it's okay, how do we then make sure that the people who need to hear the conversations are in the room when the conversation happens?
Sure, thank you. Thank you. That's very good question.
Oh, sorry. And when we talk about,
I think you must answer.
when we were talking about the fact that we always hear about men from women. We always hear what manhood and men are from Indo-Damast. So we hear what you should be, not what you are. So my question was also that what is a man from a man's perspective?
Okay. I like that. I like that.
Last question. Thank you. And what's Kakulu, last question here? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good evening. My name is Kwezim Ziligazi, and I work here at Rhodes. I'm really happy to hear that Ufana gets some airtime in the sequel. But I would like to invite Umelusi to reflect on the character, because he's quite present. There's been a lot said this evening about showing up. And for me, he looks like the guy who consistently shows up. I was a bit puzzled by him in a way that even though he does show up, he seems in Isipolisa Sakhe to use the only tools he have from Isipolisa into the shape that he knows. So even that showing up might be challenging because it's not fit for purpose at times. So I'd like to invite Melusi to comment on that.
That's the last question.
One more. I've been instructed. Oh, can you not? Ilapha, ne? Here. Oh, okay. It's political. Let's do it this way. Since we've heard from here, sorry, Haika, we will have a question outside. Can we have one at the back and then we are done? I love you, boy. Thank you, everybody.
Good evening to everyone, and especially to the panelists. So I have a question. I heard Uput Zolisa say that the 21st century views emotion or vulnerability in a sort of feminine perspective. So I would like to ask, do the panelists believe that vulnerability and emotion is sort of tied to femininity and cannot exist outside of femininity and can be vulnerable masculinity?
Thank you. Do you mind starting with the lady here? And then
What's
see
the
if
first
maybe
question? How do we bring in the people who are supposed to be part of this conversation into the conversation? And what is a man from a man's perspective?
Okay, let's start with what is a man from a man's perspective? I recently came across a quote, I can't remember from whom, but he said, a man is not himself, is only himself when he's alone. Okay? There's no absolutes here. I can only speak about my own experience and the few humans around me. That really resonated with me. And it doesn't necessarily make it unique to men. It's just that obviously I'm talking from my perspective. it doesn't make it unique to men, but what hit home for me was this idea of a role. That the only time you're actually yourself is when you're on your own. If you're showing up as a father, showing up as a colleague, showing up as a lover, showing up in all the different facets of what it is, those are hats, roles that you put on. Aspects of self, maybe, in terms of expression. But the only time we talk about this thing where you're really honest to yourself is when you look at the man in the mirror, right? Hopefully. So to me, I mean, you spoke about the convention around vulnerability. Is that a masculine thing? Is it a feminine thing? I think what Uzolisa was talking about was the convention that we come from in the 20th century. The baby boomer dream. That bullshit about what it means to be a man, a woman, a family, and all of these propagated terms that come from the commercialization of the West. We've all lapped those things up. And it's in that space where it came out. Well, even in African traditions, actually, it's the same thing. There's always been this thing about, well, you don't show your vulnerabilities. Well, part of that is also you don't want to show our weaknesses. But all of it is coating fear. It's how we're dealing with fear. And so for me, a man is whatever it wants to be. And it should be that way. But you've got to engage your own selfhood, but in relation to understanding that there's a tide around you that's pointing a finger, and every single one of the people that is looking at you has a different opinion of what you should be. And the tussle is, are you going to listen to those voices, or are you going to listen to your own? And I think that's the everyday struggle of what it really means. And to me, that's being human, so it's not even an exclusively man thing. So I don't know what it means to be a man. But I know what it means not to be. And fundamentally, that's not showing up for self. Even leave children, leave family. But it's when we give up on ourselves. Part of what gives us some kind of reciprocity is toil. Isn't it strange that we get joy, endorphins, from working out? When you've known you've done your best in something, don't you feel good? That's a bit strange. It's quite a complicated space. It's worth studying. And that's what it is to be human. And yeah, I'd leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question about Ufana. I think I'm also equally excited to hear that his story continues in the next sequel, which also means you'll be here for the screening, right?
Yes,
the next one.
Definitely, yeah. You'd love to be here.
I think before even just being impressed by his morality, just the storyline of a cop who reads Sensu was just very impressive. But on a serious note, I think there's something there's a frustration I felt on behalf of Fana. And this is reflected in society, and it's also reflected in the kind of research we do. We focus, again, a lot on the toxic masculinity. We focus on the violent man, and then we tend to overlook or ignore the man who shows up every day, which I found Fana to represent. He represents what we could call a caring masculinity, a masculinity that is already accountable to women, a masculinity that is already caring not just for himself and his wife, but also caring for a child that he knows is not his. And the reality is in African households that could be seen as denigrating his own manhood. How are you having another man's child in your house? Sure. But despite and in spite of this, he takes on this young man as a fatherly figure. There's this striking scene when they're getting ready for the funeral, and he helps him tuck in his collar. I just thought that was such a striking, again, it's a mundane situation, but for me, it struck me as significant in getting him ready, not just for the day, but getting him ready to face this big event that was about to happen in his life. So I think coming back to the issue of fun, I also agree. It's him using the tools that he has in his toolbox, but also understanding that even with Fana, someone whose masculinity we may say is caring or positive, there is also space for a constant becoming and a constant improvement. So he might even suffer at some point from the way we frame men and not providing men with a space to look for help in those moments. But what I think he so wonderfully represents is a contradiction. Even within a good man, there is that sense of frustration where cracks show and he finds himself punching ubuyile, you know, or even where cracks show and he finds himself also in danger. And so all of these things, for me, they speak to the contradictory nature of masculinity. And then maybe to come back to also the question of what is a man. What I think this film does wonderfully is to show us different kinds of men, right? And so again, in our work, we say masculinity is not simply biological. And so we see how these men are showing up and are performing masculinity in different ways. And we also then see how class and how race then shapes the different ways that they do masculinity. So I think there is no one kind of man, but there are masculinities and we see them represented in this film so wonderfully. But maybe
I just wanted to prompt you on something. There's a relationship that I personally enjoyed in the film that I've always been a personal fan of, which is the relationship. It's not much is said about it, but you read between the lines. It's the relationship between Ufana and Umakhulu Sasa. My mom had a relationship like that with this young doctor dude. This guy's younger than me, but her and him were friends like this. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, they're not related, but there's almost like probably it's an intimation that umama is missing in his life. So you take on someone else becomes your mother essentially. And if you look at Fana, that's where his vulnerabilities lie. He's always crying to her. You know, this big crying man, but he's crying to this woman. Yes.
And so I also thought, I saw that, and in my initial watching of the film, I was confused. Is he her son? It was quite unclear.
Yes.
But what, again, I think the film does so well, and I think you touch on it here. I love how Queenstown is shown as a landscape of healing and redemption. And so what is happening there when Umam Sasa takes on this young man who's not hers, she's also become a mother, she's becoming a mother to the community.
Correct, yeah.
You know, again, these are things that we see in the township. But I guess my ending point there, because I want to almost pose a rhetorical question to all of us, is what kind of social worlds do we need to create for men to be able to heal, for men to be able to hope, and for men to be able to show up in redeemed ways? Yeah.
Oh.
And then about but let me try something. Which one is You know, the concept of vulnerable masculinity is a beautiful one from the perspective of a liberated man. I touched on the 21st century and what it meant to us in terms of informing us of what masculinity is. 20th, no? Yeah. So coming into the new millennium and all of that, this century asks us to be a little bit softer, you know, to be a little bit more self-aware, to be a little bit more open. Masculinity in itself, in its traditional terms, from a man's perspective, is about providing and about protecting, which are two great concepts. I think God created us to be that. And I appreciate that responsibility that we have. But what I love about this century that we're in is that this question or this insistence on us softening up a bit is quite helpful to us, because it forces us, or in fact it takes a load off our shoulders, because we've been carrying so much. And I would like to encourage Amajita to actually take it on, because at the end of the day, it's not a challenge on your manhood, but it's a challenge to, it's an alleviation of pressure, which I love and appreciate from this century. So masculine vulnerability is something I practice, I love it, and I highly recommend it.
I have a question for him.
Yeah.
No, hey, come on, guys. Well, you didn't ask him anything, so I must ask. Obviously, I haven't seen the dance performance that you're putting together, right? It touches a bit to what she's talking about in terms of accessing vulnerability. What in movement, in motion, that you in your creation, did you find are the vulnerability points where you're like, you know what I mean? That's a little, I guess, I don't know if you're getting my point. Yes, could you speak to that in terms of what vulnerabilities did you find of your masculinity when you were playing with the body and motion? Make sense?
Okay, makes sense. I would say I'll base it off of what had happened before I took on the play. Before I took on doing my own project, I was acting in a colleague or someone else's show. I was playing with Samson, was a Babylon. So, Gokundlalo Samson, Diajima,
yeah.
I wanted to be big, strong, almost invincible. I'm being Samson. And immediately after Londo, I jumped into a project where I had to confront a self that was not Samson. To confront her, just as you said, when you see yourself in the mirror, I had to look at this guy who was big and in shape, but as I'm writing down my ideas, there's these holes that are poked out that I need to fill. And in the creating process, and then into engineering is dibuzile kwamajita. Because I have the responsibility that in my creation I carry not only my story, but I this represent kahle kwamajita. Ethically. So as ndisiya kweBrazil ndibabuza ndingayiveza njani le ndawo ba danzoyika. Yabo? Ndingayicommita njani ukoyika kwami okanye more importantly being afraid of being afraid. Instead of just being afraid of doing the thing, I was more afraid of being afraid of doing the thing. So confronting that as a vulnerability was a journey that I had to go through, and we talk about the woman, the feminine side, the vulnerability. I struggled a lot with this, but then I started reaching out for help, and the Honorable Professor Heike Gehring, she stepped in and really found ways to motivate me to tap into those areas. Because even though there's a language barrier in the way that I told the story, she was able to tell me that no, like, it's not coming across as real. It seems like you're acting it. You actually have to feel it again. So I had to tap back into those memories, and there's techniques that they teach us. There's Stanislavski method of emotional memory. You have to go back to that memory of that vulnerable state. And just when you're talking about the decentering that they had questioned you about, where you separate yourself from the character. Because now we're like we rehearsal. So yeah, I would just say it's an ongoing negotiation, and it's ongoing. There's different rounds of it all. There's no final answer. Yabo. And that's like the thing is like la manje then mhlambi kukho manje then woyisayo.
Yeah.
Bandi yakubuhle kanoni. Bandi kwabile. Dimo wrong ne. Because dikwabela ntoni ubuze ukubona. But ke uku disuke from an era where saziqhwatshwa nobobhu bami. So that's the negotiation that we're doing. Xa ufike roads uyafika apha uliqhwala usandojanga. Fike inwana ikjengegama. Yayo Lwanda, who's it? Now you have to unlearn lando ba ekusi. Awunaphuti. So those kind of things, it's an ongoing negotiation, and even in the next part, wherever I go, because we're gonna travel. In the small pond of East London, and I went to a bigger site, and I had to become. So that's the concept of being and becoming. You're always being and becoming. So yeah.
Mr. Muller, you'd show us some examples of this motion.
Jamil, mandibambe ngokwam.
Go on, I didn't mean to direct this one.
First, enkosi kakhulu, guys. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and insights. Can we please give them a round of applause? I see Kulile, thanks to you, thanks to your testimonies. Can I please call up Uhaika Gering, Professor, to...
Professor.
Oh. Sorry, Haika, I think SRC is coming first, or... Sorry, is it SRC first, or is it you?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Somebody meant to announce me.
Thank you, Haika.
Well, greetings everyone again. Firstly, I just wanted to state that tonight we didn't try to define masculinity in one sentence, and that's the whole point. Healthy masculinity isn't a fixed script, and it's a practice. And this discussion reminded us that masculinity doesn't exist in isolation, but it is shaped in community. And if there's one thing to take away, it's this, and it's just the strength isn't about endurance, it's about honesty, it's about accountability, and it's about having the courage to be fully human. So I just wanted to implore us to keep these conversations going, not only in these spaces, but then between our friends, our families, and just our places of education. And with that, as you've been called on, Prof, this is Prof. Heike Gering. I'm head of the drama department. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. My role really is to round the evening off with gratitude. No event is ever complete without thank yous. And I'm aware that it's been a long day and everybody has been so generous with their time and their energy, but it's really essential that we do finish off. You know, we're in theater, we believe in rituals. There's always a beginning, middle, and an end. And the end has to be, thank yous have to be part of that end. So I'm going to try and be short and sweet, and yet I do want to really acknowledge people who made this fantastic event happen. So the first person I want to thank is our wonderful Dean of Humanities. Prof. Sipokazi Magadla. She has really managed to, you know, she was the visionary behind this event, and in so many ways it was all about bringing elements together. I mean, Prof. Magadla, from my experience, is known publicly as quite a staunch feminist, so that in itself was very interesting that she responded to this very critical moment where we're asking a lot of questions in the university, in societies, around masculinity and manhood, and also male students, do they feel welcome at the university? And that, she tackled that. She's just started as dean, and this was the first event, and it's at the end of the first term. So thank you so much for that. I was so struck when I came in this afternoon by the fusion of popular culture and academia. I thought, oh, finally, thank goodness. You know, we listened to funky music while we were watching PowerPoint presentations of books. Then we watched a fantastic movie that is so deeply philosophical, so political, way more than we could actually say through a paper, but yet we also need those papers to speak back to it. So thank you so much for allowing these conversations to happen. And I just want to say that this is the beginning of a project that that's going to have a longer life throughout the year. So thank you. Yeah, that's just amazing that you managed to bring us all together. I then want to...
Yeah, thank you for that.
I then want to thank our honorable guests, specifically our guest artist, Jamil, Zolisa. Guys, it takes it's very difficult to make a movie. It is unspeakably difficult in this country. So, thank you for the film. Thank you for being those people, because there are not many of you. Thank you for those people who are willing to put everything out, to do everything to make these things happen. Sometimes a movie takes 10 years in one's head, and then it happens, and then there's the funding, and then sometimes it's not. And it's a game of waiting and doing and waiting and doing. And then with actors also, we switch the buttons at night in our lounges. We just flip through the TV, not realizing that what these people go through. They're so open, they're so vulnerable. They put themselves on the line. They have to be so super brave. And for us, for our entertainment, to make our lives more interesting. So just thank you very much for doing that. And then on top of it, thank you for being here, because they have busy lives. They're starting in a month's time. So, like Lisa was saying, sometimes you want to be with family, you want to be with friends, you want to chill a little bit. And within that need and that, life, they offered, or they're willing to come here to speak to us in Makanda. So I really want to thank you for that, and also congratulate you for this amazing work that you've made and all the work that you make. And then I want to also thank our other panelists, Push, who is our convener, Pumelela. Thank you for holding the whole space together, for holding us all accountable, people who have to ask questions, panelists, and so on. So thank you for that. Thank you also, Dr. Malusi Dlamini from Anthropology, for your rigorous work, for the amazing insight you have to this movie, and to theorizing around that, taking it back to academia. So this is the thing. We have people who are in these liminal spaces, who have to straddle the worlds of the popular culture and then the philosophy and the thinking around it. Thank you so much, Luanda. I find this moment also so profound because Pumelela Push was a student here many years ago, 2013-14, and now Luanda. So there's an intergenerational situation happening here as well, which is beautiful. So thank you guys for that. I want to thank the deanery in general. So I did thank Professor Magadla, but also then the two deputy deans of the Faculty of Humanities. So Prof. Mwepo, Patrice Mwepo, thank you so much for also supporting our dean. Leaders can never be leaders without a community. So again, the community thing. So thank you so much. And then also Dr. Dominique Santos, thank you for your support and your support also for this project. I want to thank the DVC of Research and Innovation, RIP. Dr. Kwezi Zilikazi, she was the person who said she's just working here. So thank you so much for your support. I can't see you right now. Oh, there you are. Okay. So for your support, for helping us make this project a reality. I want to thank the Vice-Chancellor for being here, for also, Prof, were you? Okay. For actually raising this matter around masculinities and men and the critical questions we have to ask as a university. Why are universities seemingly unwelcome places for so many young men? So that matter has been raised over and over again, this year again at graduation, and this event is in many ways a response to that question that you've been asking. I want to thank the organizing committee. They mainly consisted, we called ourselves a team. They mainly consisted of Dr. Dlamini, who's now one of the panelists. He's from the Anthropology department. Then also Dr. Lewis Anguria. She's the head of art. Lewis, where are you now? Okay, there. Dr. Anguria, and I was part of that team. So thank you, and again, the Dean brought these different departments together. So she found a way of making us work together, and I found that so wonderful, and I want to thank you for the opportunity. I want to thank our students who've been here for their generosity. It's been a long day. A lot of them are very, very busy, and yet they came. I want to thank the anthropology students that are here, the fine art students, and the drama students. Thank you for bringing this amazing spirit to the event. Thanks for bringing your generosity of spirit. Without the students, we have no reason to be here. So thanks for being here as students, but also being here tonight, specifically, honoring our wonderful guests. I want to thank the theatre, the production team. So many of these things happen invisibly. One has these amazing people who are willing to work backstage to hold the whole event together, and they hardly ever get a thanks, a good thanks. So we'll start with our theatre administrator, Gary Kitching. I want to thank people there in the lighting box, Sipusetu Balakisi. I want to thank Sonwabu Makanda. Also our theatre director, Dr. Nkuleko Sibanda. Our front of house team, the whole team, I'm not going to mention everybody's names, but our front of house team, mainly led by Lucretia Stierman and Tango Luka. I want to, in line with the students, I want to thank the SRC and especially the program director, the president of the SRC. Thank you for your faith in us. By the way, I just want to thank people also for their faith in the power of what the theatre can do, even the building. You know, we could have hosted this event somewhere else, but we did it here at the Rhodes Theatre. So thank you, Sipukazi, for your trust and your belief in the theatre and for making us useful. I want to, sorry, I'm just battling with the mic because I'm short, so it's a little bit me and the reading and the mic. Okay, so that's why going up and down. Okay, so I just also want to thank the Division of Communications and Advancement. They've been doing the live streaming. They've been doing a lot of advertisement for us. So it's Ilva Pieterse and Kama Antoni and the team. You've been seeing them with their cameras. I want to thank our photographer. Actually, we have more than one photographer, but our lead photographer, Kuma Songelwa. I want to thank Yellowbone Entertainment. You've heard the name before. Kayla Ahmed, who brought our guest artists here and who was responsible for all the communication. Also for Sinetemba Konzapi, who was linking us to Yellowbone Entertainment. Thank you very much. And then I want to thank the Division of Equity and Institutional Culture. Thank you for the whole team and especially also their leader, Dr. Claire Kelly. And I really, really want to thank the Division of Student Services and Development. Guys, these people do amazing things. I mean, I've seen them twice in a row this week, just for events in this building, let alone other things. They work day and night, they're incredible. So this team is led by Dr. Tondi, Dr. Pakiso Tondi, and Mzikazi Nolosa. I think Mzikazi, you're still here. I also want to thank all the administrators from the different departments. Sorry guys, I'm almost done. It's important to acknowledge people who we don't see, because they do a lot of behind the scenes work. Almost done, almost done. From the departments of Anthropology, Drama and Fine Arts, the administrators Annalisa Matakane, Karen Kori, Des Becker, Tando Keke, Tammy Youthet, and Gary Kitching, again, were all working behind the scenes to make this event happen. And then I want to thank the university at large through the VC, but also all the stakeholders in the university for making these kinds of dynamic events happen and for allowing these conversations that are often difficult to happen. And on that note, I'm wishing you all a very good night. Thank you.
Oh, Sabule. Well done, well done. Thank you.